It's no secret that writing can be lonely work, but does it really have to be? Whether you're full-time, part-time, or just starting out, you'll get insights into the tricks, tips, and production habits of writers from every level of the biz. From best-selling authors to those launching their first novels, you're sure to be in the company of friends as we encourage great writers to divulge and share their secrets. This is the Great Writers Share podcast with your host, best-selling author, Daniel Wilcox.
Hello and welcome to the Great Writers Share podcast with me, Daniel Wilcox, where every week I hijack an hour or so of time from some of the kindest and hardest working writers around today to join me on the show and discuss everything that makes them tick, roar and bounce. Today's date is Monday the 8th of June and I'll dive right in with my personal update. Well, the launch of the collaboration for authors is fast approaching. The book goes live on Friday 26th of June, which is a little shy of 3 weeks away, and I'm currently in the throes of putting all my launch plans into action. I've never launched a non-fiction before, so I'm brushing up on ads. I'm lined up to appear on some of my favourite personal podcasts, and I'm doing anything I can to try and get the most success from the launch as possible. I'll also be releasing an alternate cover hardback, which is looking pretty slick in my opinion, as I'd love to create something that looks sharp and people are proud to have on their shelves. I'm so curious to see how all of this goes, and I'll be sure to bring you guys along for the journey. I know collaborations can be pretty niche, but I know that there's value to be had from this book, so I'm excited just to get it out there and to see what it does. The Patreon exclusive Great Writers Learn mini-series is currently being enjoyed by all of my wonderful patrons over at www.patreon.com/greatwritershare. The incredible John L. Monk and I had a blast putting this 6-episode mini-series together, and we cover a range of topics that can benefit authors of all experience levels, including book covers, marketing, and bad behaviours for authors, to name but a few. If you're interested in finding out what all the fuss is about, then you can get instant access to the 2 hours of bonus content over at www.patreon.com/guess what? Great Writers Share. In fiction news, I'm rounding down to the final edits of episode 1 of When Winter Comes, and I'm in the process of sorting the release dates for the subsequent volumes. I put a lot of steam into these books, so I'm interested to see how they perform when they do come out. They'll also be the first published books in my brand new horror imprint, Devil's Rock Publishing, which officially launched this week. Not a loud launch, a nice soft launch. But people have been asking a lot of questions about my plans for a horror imprint, and it's all now alive and kicking. So if anyone wants to check it out, then you can just go over to www.devilsrockpublishing.com, and I'll put a link for that in the show notes as well. For any horror writers listening to this podcast, I've also recently announced a call out for submissions for a horror anthology that I'm putting together, which explores the other side of life, that's to say death. So if you want to get involved, then again, just go over to devilsrockpublishing.com and I'll put a link in the show notes for that. A quick reminder that if you want to learn how to supercharge your scenes, then the sensational Jay Thorne is hosting a free 5-day online event in which he'll take you through all the principles you need to write and revise compelling scenes that will exponentially improve your novel or non-fiction book. The course will be running from 15th to the 19th of June, and if you want to get involved, there'll be a link in the show notes for you to click straight on through. This week's guest is the immensely talented YouTube sensation, Jenna Moreci. Jenna generously shares her writing journey and knowledge through her Writing with Jenna Moreci channel, and is the best-selling author of The Saviour's Champion, with the sequel arriving in late September of this year. In this conversation, we take an incredibly deep dive into Jenna's rise to YouTube stardom, what it takes to make it as an author on YouTube, and the realities of living the public author life. We also cover the benefits of diversifying and maximising your income streams for financial security, as well as how to cultivate viewers into superfans. Based off the content of this week's interview, I'm posing the question to you guys: how successfully do you engage with your readers and or fans? If you want to answer that question, just jump over into the Patreon group or the Facebook group and get involved. But now, without any further ado, we'll dive into the interview with the one and the only Jenna Moreci. Enjoy. Jenna Moreci is a half-human, half-weaponized robot hellbent on overthrowing mankind. She's also a best-selling author specializing in so-cute-you-could-barf romance, interspersed between extreme violence and bloodshed. A Silicon Valley native, Jenna hosts a YouTube channel with over 210,000 subscribers at the time of recording, where she uses her passion for storytelling and background in business to help other creators navigate their writing and publishing journey. When she's not writing or tubing, Jenna enjoys listening to music, cuddling with her dog, and kissing her fiancé's gorgeous face. Who doesn't? Her other talents include prolific cursing, spilling, dropping things, accidentally making people cry, and cooking. Jenna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that.
No worries. I absolutely love that intro. My first question springs off of that, which is how are you so gifted at accidentally making people cry?
Okay.
Have you got an example?
Yes, I do have oh my gosh, this is the one that always comes to mind. Okay, well, here's the thing is I'm very sarcastic and I don't know, I'm constantly joking around and I even at 33, I'm still not used to the fact that not everyone gets my sense of humor, and I'm constantly making jokes and not realizing that that apparently wasn't an appropriate joke. And the one that always comes to mind is I was in high school and I was in the leadership team, like the student council, and we were going around hanging up flyers. And there was a girl that I was working with at the time named Ashley, and we were hanging up flyers on classroom doors. And she said, "Don't forget to shut the door." And I said, "Don't forget to shut your face." And then she said, "Jenna, that was uncalled for." And I said, "Your face is uncalled for." And then she said, "Why do you have to be so mean all the time?" And I said, "Why does your face have to be so mean all the time?" And I thought she was just playing back with me. It was a your face joke. I mean, everyone knows your face jokes are jokes.
Absolutely.
She started crying and I'm laughing because I think that we're bantering. I'm laughing. And then I realized that those are real tears. And then I'm like, "Wait, are you actually crying?" And the other girl with us, I forgot her name, goes, "Haven't you done enough, Jenna?" And then from that point on, Ashley was like the sweetheart of the class. From that point on, I was like blacklisted. No one liked me. No one would talk to me in that class because I made sweet little Ashley cry. But to this day, I think it's not my fault because
Amazing.
Everyone knows that your face joke is just a joke. I did not actually want her to shut her face.
They're just empty and hollow. I used to live with a girl that used to just constantly do that pretty much every sentence I said. And it got to the point where he's just like, do you know that kind of exhaustive, I don't know what to do. All I can do is just sigh. That's all I'm going to give you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are some jokes that are just so obnoxious that people are always kidding. That's like your face, your mom, name of your sex tape. Those are things everyone knows. It's not serious, but Ashley didn't know, and it ruined my reputation in that class.
Oh man, see, my head's now gone to how many your face jokes can I fit into this interview? But I'm going to try and be professional, and every sentence I'm just going to throw one in. But let's dive in a little bit to your writing and your journey. I'd love if you could tell my audience a little bit about how you got into the world of writing and what your journey has looked like up until this point.
Well, in terms of how I got into writing, I've literally wanted to be a writer since I was 6 years old. In the first grade, we used to make construction paper books every Monday or Friday. It was one day a week. And we would write our stories, we would illustrate them, and then we would bind them with construction paper. And from that point on, I was hooked. My first book was called The Funeral, and it was about dead cats, which tells you everything you need to know about me and my mental stability. My teacher was afraid, but pretty much from that point on, I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. I knew very early on. In terms of my journey from that point, it was the same as a lot of writers. My family was like, "You said writer, but you mean doctor, right? You mean CEO, right?" So not a lot of encouragement there. And so by the time I got to college, I had been writing stories and whatnot my whole life. But once I got to college, I was like, okay, I'll do the realistic thing and I will get a business degree, and I'm really good at math. I'll pursue something in that area. So I got a business degree and I got a job in finance, and I hated it so much. It was soul crushing, and I would come home and just drink and be like, this is the rest of my life. I was a stockbroker. It's like, I'm going to be fucking dealing with the stock market the rest of my life and handling all these annoying ass customers and working with people I don't like. And at this point in time, I was still writing for fun. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot. I'm going to try to write a book and see if I can make it a lucrative side job. And if I can do that, I will, feel like I'm doing at least something in my life that's worthwhile, even if my day job is hell. And so I started writing my debut novel on the side. Fast forward a few years. At this point, I'm still working in finance, and I'm almost done with my debut novel. I had started to build a little bit of a platform. I had a blog, that sort of thing. And my fiance had a major accident and broke his spine. And so I quit my job to sign on as his full-time caregiver. And I had to, obviously stop my blog. I had to stop writing for a while and just focus on helping, taking care of him, helping him relearn to walk and all that stuff. And a few months down the line, he was getting better enough where I could start writing again. And when you deal with a situation like that where someone you love, almost dies, it changes your perspective. It makes you look at things differently and sort of makes you realize that you don't have a lot of time left on this planet. You could die at any moment. And so I decided to take a risk, and I didn't really enjoy blogging at all, but people had told me I would be really good at YouTube, and I had always been terrified of the thought, but my mindset had changed. I decided to give YouTube a shot. And as a way to potentially build my author platform, I thought if I get 100 subscribers, I'll count it as a win. I had very, very, very low expectations. And now I have over 210,000 subscribers.
It's
and
incredible.
Millions of views. Yeah, it's crazy. I cannot emphasize enough how much I did not expect it. And not only is writing my, fun side job, it's my full-time job, and I was able to make it my full-time job after just my debut novel, thanks to trying out YouTube. So that's where I'm at today. It's a long journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's incredible to see, obviously, the rise to success through such adversity is something that a lot of people, I think, admire and can learn a lot from. I'd love to dig a little bit into the early days of your journey into YouTube, because like you say, it's a terrifying thing to approach. And I think it's something that a lot of people have definitely dabbled in or are interested in, but aren't sure what it takes to get onto YouTube, how to actually make a real success of it. So what did the early days of YouTube look like for you? Before you posted that first video, what was your thought pattern there?
Well, I was scared shitless. I did not want, I'm kind of a charismatic person, I'm loud and I'm goofy. And a lot of people assume because of that I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I'm an introvert like most writers. I prefer, staying at home. I don't like going to parties and things like that. I'm just loud. So I was not excited about the idea of putting my face on the internet. But what I did is I scripted about 10 videos and then I filmed them before I ever posted any to my channel. When I finally posted one, I felt like I was going to throw up. I was like nauseated. I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. But I think the biggest mistake I made early on is that I was trying really, really hard to be mostly professional with a side of silly, like a little sprinkle of myself. So I didn't cuss, and if I did cuss, I would bleep it out. I tried to, look fancier in my videos. I just try to sound like an adult, I guess. And my videos weren't performing. They weren't doing well. No one was really watching. And I got to a point where I was like, well, fuck it. No one's watching this anyway. So I'm just going to actually talk about what I want to talk about. And I'm going to talk the way I want to talk. I'm just going to be myself. And once I did that, my channel took off pretty much overnight. It was an instant reaction. It went from like 100 subs to like 7,000 subs in a week. It was crazy. And it was funny because I was at my sister's bachelorette party at the time. And so we're all hanging out and everyone's like,
that's a good place to be for something like that to happen.
Yeah. And I'm just like staring at my phone like, you guys, and no one understands the severity of what I'm going through because it's my sister's bachelorette party. I'm like, I have no one to be excited about with this because we're supposed to be excited about the bride. But yeah, it was just an overnight thing. And the lesson from this is not cuss a lot in videos and you'll do well. It's just that because I have friends who are great on YouTube and have the total opposite format as I do. It's just authenticity makes a huge difference. People can smell a phony a mile away. So if you're yourself, it'll make people a lot more comfortable and a lot more interested in what you have to say. So that's always my number one advice for people.
So do you attribute your change of demeanor entirely to the overnight success, or do you think there were other factors there that you can maybe think of that helped spread your video?
I think it was in part that, and also the topic. I mean, the topics that I was talking about before are still topics that I talk about, on my channel today: self-publishing, marketing, writing tips, things like that. But the video that kind of launched me was the 9 weird habits of writers, and it definitely helps to include some relatable, funny stuff to talk about. So now I've made it a habit where at least once a month I have something that's silly on my channel, and it could still be potentially helpful or informative, but the main point is that it's satire, it's funny, and it's there to make people laugh. And so I made the video. I think that the 2 videos that launched me were the 9 weird habits of writers, as well as I think it was the worst parts about being a writer, and like the thumbnail was being a writer sucks, something like that. And it's just like kind of ranting in a funny way that people can relate to. And I think a lot of writers tend to feel like they're alone in this. It's kind of a lonely profession, and seeing someone on the internet who's going through the same shit as you it's refreshing, and it makes a difference.
Yeah. And what scale on the timeline did this all happen? Because if I've got my dates right, your first video, or your first public video, is currently up on YouTube, launched in July of 2014, and then your first novel came out in August of 2015. So was the acceleration in that timeline, or was it sort of after your debut novel launched?
It was before my debut novel. I think it wasn't. That was many, many moons ago. I can't remember like the exact dates, but it wasn't. It definitely it took off before my debut novel launched. But when my debut novel launched, I had like 9,000 subscribers. So for me, that was a huge jump from the 100 I was aiming for. But it's nowhere near where I'm at now, which is the 200 plus thousand subscribers. So it had started taking off, but it pretty much around my debut novel, I was at 9,000. And then after my debut novel came out, I think because it adds some credibility to the advice you give, then I had another huge boost, and I went from like 9,000 to 50,000. And that's when it started to get very real. Like, oh crap, I'm a YouTuber now. This is very bizarre.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to dig into that a little bit further, because I can imagine there are a lot of people listening to this who, like I say, like the idea of YouTube, but maybe haven't launched their first novel and think they're not credible enough to actually spread that message, to record these videos, unless they've released a book. Was there any hang up beforehand of you being in that situation, and how did you overcome that?
Absolutely. What had happened was that I had a blog, and I shared a lot of my writing on it, and I had followers who would write me and say, "You're really good at writing. Could you critique my work?" And I kind of used that as a way to build my audience at the time. And a lot of them were like, "You're really funny and charismatic. Why don't you do YouTube and give writing advice?" And I was like, ha ha ha, no way. I'm not even published. I'm not a credible source. But I got that message so often that after a certain point, it was like, well, maybe I am credible because people keep asking me to do this. So when I started my channel, I was very honest about the fact that I'm not published yet, I'm just writing my debut, and I think being honest and upfront makes a huge difference. I'm not claiming to be an expert. I'm just giving my advice because my advice was requested. And if you don't want to take my advice, you don't have to. You can go elsewhere. It's 100% your prerogative. I wouldn't blame you. So I think so long as you are honest about why you're starting the channel, and you're honest about your credentials or lack thereof, it makes a difference. And never, putting yourself out there as an expert in something that you're not an expert of. And also, to this day, I will not cover a topic that I don't feel like I'm qualified to talk about. One of the most requested topics I get asked about is short stories. I haven't written a short story since I was in college. So I won't talk about them. I won't give advice because I don't feel like I know what I'm talking about. I reserve video topics for things that I do feel like I'm qualified to discuss.
Absolutely. I guess it comes back to that argument of when in your writing career can you call yourself a writer? And ultimately, for some people, that's when you have released your book. For other people, it's just when you're performing the art of writing and you're doing it regularly, and you're putting the words on the paper. I
think personally, you're a writer once you write.
Yeah, I agree.
I think you're an author once you've published something and you've sold at least one copy, because I'm very like logically minded, and those are the actual definitions of writer and author. Writer is someone who writes, and an author is someone who has made money off of their writing. And so that's how I see it. And if anyone wants to refute it, just open a dictionary, and I'm right, you're wrong, shut up.
I have the backup to prove it.
Right.
What does it mean to be a writer on YouTube?
Well, oh man. Okay. Well, I'm trying to think of a way. My first thought is that it's a double-edged sword. It's definitely has so many positive, elements to it. And if I could go back, I wouldn't change the decision I made. But there are negative elements, and I don't think it's for everyone by any stretch of the imagination. Being a woman on YouTube, like removing writer from the equation, being a woman on YouTube means you are opening yourself up to tons of abuse. I get death threats, I get rape threats, I get, show us your tits, I get all kinds of stuff. And it's obviously, being a man on YouTube, you're going to be opened up to abuse too, but you're going to get more as a woman. It's just statistics. So being a woman on YouTube is tough. Being a writer on YouTube is also tough, because you're opening your personal self up to that abuse, and you're writing. And for example, I have a lot of writer friends, obviously, who aren't on YouTube. And obviously we all deal with the same crap of negative reviews, or someone being like, oh, you suck, that kind of crap. But being a writer on YouTube, it's coupled with someone maybe not liking you as a person, because most readers don't get to know them as a human being. You're just a name on a book cover. On YouTube, there's a face and there's a lifestyle, and people meet my fiance, they meet my dog. And so when I do receive, negative comments about my writing, it's usually coupled with me as a person. It's like, I don't like your writing because I don't like you. So there's some of that involved. I'm making this all sound very grim. Basically, you really have to have a thick skin to be a writer and a YouTuber. That said, the whole reason that I'm releasing my third novel, and I'm already a full-time writer, and I'm making more money as a writer than I made working that comfortable, normal job in finance. And that's largely because of YouTube. It's not common to only be releasing your third book and you're already a full-time author. So it's all because of YouTube. So for me, I would still pursue this path. It's just, I like to warn people that, you really do have to have a thick skin, because people can be nasty.
No, I can completely imagine that. I mean, all you have to do is just scroll through some of the comments on any video and you'll see the venom that appears on the internet.
Right.
Yeah. How, just to flip that on its head then, just to balance the dark with the light, what are some of the benefits of being a writer on YouTube?
Well, like I said, it completely launched my platform. I am doing what I love as a living much quicker than I thought I would. I thought I'd have to have 10 books out before I was doing this full time. And I'm on my third, and this is my full-time gig. Also, as much as, I emphasize the trash that can come with it, it is in no way comparable to the love. I would say at least 80% of the comments I receive are so loving and supportive. I have really amazing subscribers and readers. I have really amazing fans, and they're so sweet and so supportive. Having a platform on YouTube also opens you up to many streams of revenue. This is something that I've discussed with Sasha Black, who we are both friends with.
Yes.
That having multiple streams of revenue is really, really important as a writer. So I'm not solely dependent on my book sales. I also make ad revenue from my YouTube channel. I have sponsors who sponsor my video content. I have a merch store, which is a lot easier to promote on YouTube because YouTube has a merch shelf right below all of your videos. So everyone can see your merch anytime they watch a video. I have affiliates, things like that. I have classes that I promote through my sponsorships. So it really opens you up to a lot of different revenue streams so that you can sort of not only make more money faster, but make more money comfortably. So you're not just dependent on one stream. And then if something happens there, you're totally screwed.
I'd be very interested to know how, if you were to look at your typical production of a single video for YouTube, say a 10-minute video, what would a typical step-by-step process look, and how long would it take, or how long does it take you each week to prepare the script and to actually get that video up onto YouTube?
It's hard for me to look at it as one video because I batch film, which is where you film a bunch of videos in a day. It's very exhausting. I don't think people realize that by the time I'm done filming one video, I have a half hour of footage that needs to be trimmed down and edited. And my videos are usually about 10 minutes long. So about 20 minutes of that needs to be cut. So typically, what I usually say is that I schedule about cumulatively 1 week out of the month is devoted to producing all my video content for that month. So 1 out of your 4 of your weeks is going to be devoted to YouTube. The other 3 weeks can be writing stuff. So that usually covers a couple days to script content. I definitely recommend scripting as opposed to just freeballing, because if you just wing it, you're going to ramble and it's going to be a really long, boring video. So a couple days for scripting, a couple days for filming, and a couple days for editing, trimming, that kind of stuff. It's a little bit easier for me because now I'm at a level where I have an assistant who can trim the content for me. So that helps. But if you're just getting started, that's not something you're going to have access to. So I would say give yourself a week to have all the content for the month done.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
It's very, very heavy.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. And obviously, as you've mentioned a couple of times, it's built your platform. You have this, well, obviously nearly 250,000 subscribers on this platform. One thing that I'm massively curious about is obviously you write fiction, and I'd argue that your channel is relatively non-fiction in terms of you're speaking about the art of writing. How much of that actually translates from the readers and the viewers into sales, if that makes sense?
I was just discussing this with Sasha the other day and I forgot the percentage, but it was, man, I wish I remember. But yeah, it's not going to be, a lot of people think, 210,000 subscribers, they're all buying the books. That's not how it works. Yeah. Not everyone who comes to my channel is there, because they're a fan of me. A lot of people just want free writing advice. And that's kind of like the risk you take with any platform you build. You know that only a certain percentage is going to buy it. I can't remember what the exact percentage was, but I think it's around I want to say closer to 10% or something like that. So it's definitely not the full scope of things. Also, I kind of look at it like this. The people who subscribe to my channel, I look at them as they're there for the writing advice. Then when you go to my other social media platforms like Twitter or Instagram, you'll see I have 22,000 followers on Twitter and about the same on Instagram. These people discovered me through YouTube, and then they went to my other social media platforms because they want to get to know me better. And now they are more of a fan of me and my writing and, my books. And so I feel like those numbers are more reflective of who's going to be buying the books. So as you can see, it's, definitely a smaller percentage, but it's still a good percentage in terms of, selling books. It's just people have unrealistic expectations that everyone who subscribes to your channel is going to buy the book. And that's not how it works.
Absolutely.
They want free information.
No, I'm in a very similar situation, which I'm way further back than you in terms of trying to work out how to brand my nonfiction and my fiction and try to work everything into each other so that they're cohesive, but at the same time, the right people are getting the right information. Did it take much? Did you actively strategize in order to do this, or was it a case of a lot of this just fell into place for you?
There was some strategy as well as some happy coincidences. For example, I write adult fiction. My books feature sex, they feature cussing, and they feature graphic violence. And I cuss on my channel. I make dick jokes. I talk about stabbing characters and characters dying. And if you are not comfortable with that content, you are not going to watch my channel. And that's great because I would rather target my target audience, who's going to buy my books. And I'll get lots of messages from people saying, your channel's good, but have you considered not cussing so that younger people can watch? And I'm like, well, not really, because I want to talk the way I want to talk. I like talking as an adult. And also I'm trying to target my target audience as people who will enjoy adult fiction. And it doesn't benefit me to get, maybe this sounds selfish, but it doesn't benefit me to have a bunch of 11-year-olds, watching my channel. What if they buy my book and then they're like, Mom, what's a cock? I don't want to be in that situation. So a lot of it is, this is just my personality. This is how I talk. So it worked out, but it's also how I write. So the way that I built my platform, the kind of humor that I use on my platform, it all translates into my writing as well. So it's half strategy, half, oh, that's a very happy coincidence. I'm glad it worked out that way.
Yeah, it's easier when your strategy is you, and that's just your personality, and that's you trying to pursue. And it also makes me laugh when people do send those sort of messages where it's like, maybe you couldn't swear, and you're just like, if you don't want that, I'm sure there are thousands of other channels in which you can get the same information, but catered towards your child.
And that's the thing is, most of the writers on YouTube write young adult fiction. I'm one of maybe two that I can think of. I can only think of myself and one other writer on YouTube who write adult fiction. Everyone else that I can think of writes young adult, and they don't cuss in their videos, maybe seldomly. They don't make the penis jokes and all that stuff. And they attract a much younger audience. So when people tell me, why don't you try not cussing? It's like, there are like at least 30 other channels for you to go to. They already got you covered. I'm going to continue doing my thing over here.
Yeah, it's the same as people that get offended by any kind of content. It's like, you just don't have to. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else. That's fine.
Right. No one's making you watch this. There's no gun to your head.
People don't like to take responsibility, but let's not dig down that particular path. I would be doing a massive disservice if, obviously, you've mentioned it a couple of times. Your latest book, The Saviour's Champion, is coming out soon. The Saviour's Sister came out in 2018.
The reverse. The Saviour's Champion came out in 2018. The Saviour's Sister's coming out soon.
Twisting around, my bad. But obviously, there's been quite a big gap between the release of those two books, and that hasn't really affected you financially because you've got all these other avenues. You've diversified your income. You're using the different social media streams, which is an incredible strategy and one that I'm massively envious of.
Oh, thank you.
How have you found actually writing the second book and taking that time in? I sometimes get confused as to whether or not I'm in a bubble of people who fast release, or a world in which independent fiction is slowly moving towards a fast release model, because I come across people like you and other writers as well that still are making it by doing the slower releases and working on their books. How does the process look for you, and what's it taken to get The Saviour's Sister to this point?
Well, excuse me. First, I'd like to clarify that if I could do the fast release model, I would, because I think, there's a bazillion benefits to it. Plus, I enjoy writing, like it's my favorite thing to do. And if I could just write every day and pump out all these books, I have a million ideas for books. I would love to do that. But because I'm a caregiver, my fiance, as I mentioned, broke his spine. He can walk now, but he suffers from a chronic pain condition called CRPS because of the broken spine. And so I still, take care of him in many ways, not nearly as much as I did before, but he has at least one doctor appointment a week. It's usually closer to 2 or 3. And I go to all of them with him because, I need to be kept informed. He has physical therapy. He's got a lot of stuff going on. And the reason it took me so long to release The Saviour's Sister is largely because I kept having to take, 3-month, 4-month breaks from writing because he was having a new surgery or things like that. So it's doing the slower model has worked for me largely because of my platform. I was able to do slower releases of things. When I released The Saviour's Champion, I just released the hardback and the ebook. Then 6 months later, I released the paperback. And then, maybe 6 months after that, I released the audiobook. So there were new releases I was able to do along the way that helped create a kickstart or a boost in, interest in the series among different types of readers. Plus, we all know that eventually the sales start to plateau at some point. And I had ad revenue and I had sponsors and things like that to fall back on. So that's largely why I was able to do the slow release method. But as my platform grows larger, I'm starting to, hire assistants and things like that. And I'm hoping that I can start to release a little bit quicker. I'll probably never be able to release multiple books a year because the books I write are really fat. The Save Your Sister is 169,000 words. Yeah, it's a big book. So so I'll probably never be able to write or release 5 books a year. But even if I could just do one a year, I would be so thrilled, and that would be so much. That would just be so much fun for me. But right now, my family has to come first, and so that's why I'm using the slower model. But I'm making it work.
Absolutely. I hope you don't mind me asking. I'd love to dig a little bit more into that whole family comes first part, because obviously I can imagine there is a bit of a stretch between sometimes playing that tug of war between, wanting to do the writing and obviously having to deal with the family stuff as well. For listeners who might be in a similar situation, how do you keep your mental well-being at a point in which you can continue trying to do both sides of that?
Well, my mental well-being, I'm not sure how great it is. No, I'm just kidding. Sort of half kidding, half honest. Well, it helps that my fiance Cliff, he's extremely supportive. He was, when I first started writing my debut, he was quite literally the only person who was on my team. All of my friends at the time thought it was the dumbest thing. They were all like, "Oh my gosh, are you going to be the next Stephanie Meyer Twilight? Oh, it was about vampires." Everyone that I worked with obviously thought it was so stupid. My family was displeased, to say the least. He was the only one who was like, "Jenna, you're an amazing writer. I've read your stuff. You have to do this. You'll regret it if you don't." He's always been my biggest cheerleader. He's a musician, so he understands the creative element. As his caregiver, a lot of people in his situation, suffering from chronic pain. CRPS is actually the most painful of the chronic pain disorders, which is just fantastic, But most people in his situation, they become very hardened and bitter, understandably so. I'm not hating, but he isn't. He's very when I take care of him, like, for example, the main thing is that sometimes his pain will leave him bedridden for days at a time. And if he's bedridden, that means that I'm going to be getting his food. I'm going to be getting his meds, things like that. And every time I do that, he's like, "You're an angel. You're my goddess. I love you so much. Thank you." He's very appreciative. And that makes it really easy to not kind of feel dragged down, because a lot of caregivers get burnt out. It's easier for me to not get burnt out because the person I'm caring for is very, very appreciative. That said, I still juggle far more responsibilities than pretty much anyone I know. I mean, I'm basically, in charge of the house. I'm taking care of my guy. I'm running a business and I'm writing books. And I still have days where I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is just too much stuff," and I'm stressed out. I think the ways that I personally handle it that has been helpful for me is, one, being honest with Cliff about it. Like, if I'm having a day where I just am I'm too overwhelmed, I will tell him, and he knows, okay, he's already going to do everything he can do on his own. But he knows, especially in that time, okay, really help Jenna out in whatever way she needs. Also having a supportive community of people who get it to a certain degree. So that, if you need to vent or you just need to talk about, "Oh my gosh, I'm just so exhausted." For me, I found that a lot of parents can relate to a certain degree, because it's not the same as caring for someone with chronic pain, but caring for kids can be tough. And so they can relate to the exhaustion. And I've also found that for me, being realistic about timelines, for example, I would love to do rapid release, but I can't. And I'm honest with myself about it. I'm not going to be able to release a book every year for a while. You know, I've accepted that, and I create realistic goals, realistic but challenging, and I try to work towards those. And if I'm not able to reach certain goals, I try not to beat myself up about it, because I have to keep in mind that, you know, there's someone's life that I'm, you know, trying to take care of at the same time. So there, you know, you kind of have to be realistic about your priorities. I'm not sure if that answered the question, but that's how I do it.
No, that's perfect. Obviously, it's commendable what you're doing, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I know that that can be quite sore for some people, but I think that could be useful for some people listening to this show. When it comes to creativity and drawing inspiration, where do you go to keep yourself energized and keep the creative well filled?
Well, I for me, I always say, like, I just have a very big imagination. I feel like a lot of people talk about, like, oh, read for creativity, and, you know, watch movies to get ideas and to get inspired. And I'm not saying that's not a good option. I love reading, but I don't read to get ideas. I read, you know, to relax and have fun and unwind before I go to bed. I've just always had a very wild imagination. And I think that there comes a point when society sort of tells you that creativity is pointless, and it starts beating that out of you, and you stop thinking in that way, and you kind of lose the inner child. I was a little shit growing up, and I was very well, not really, actually. I was kind of a square, but I was rebellious in terms of imagination. And everyone told me that I had to start being more realistic, and I was like, never. And I kind of just never lost the inner child. All of my favorite stories and movies and things like that are the same as they were when I was a little kid. The kind of stuff I want to write is the same as it was when I was a little kid. I really love like the old heroic romantic fantasy movies, like Jason and the Argonauts, The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, Clash of the Titans. They were my favorite as a kid. They're my favorite now. And that's the kind of stuff I like to write. Stuff that's like sword fighting and monsters, but also the guy gets the girl, that kind of stuff. And so for me, it's just very natural. Imagination is just how I've always functioned. It's been this way since I was a kid. And I always encourage people to try and find and embrace the child within you that you lost over time. It's not your fault you lost it. Society can be a dick, but if you find it again, it'll be so much easier to cook up ideas and, you know, write your stories.
Now you find that interesting that I found, particularly as I became a full-time writer, and as I started pouring more, even before I was a full-time writer, as I started pouring more into my writing, that imagination, that play just comes back to you with such force.
Right.
And it just sticks with you, and it's just, it's kind of, I don't know, without getting all smushy, it's quite magical to be on this side of things.
No, you're 100% right. I remember when I was in college, that was kind of my point, when I felt like bogged down by life and like, okay, fine, I'll do the realistic thing. This is going to sound so cheesy, I'm fully aware, but I started having a recurring dream, like literally once a week. And so I'm a big Greek mythology nut, like that's my shit. Nice. And I started having dreams that and I'm also an art nut, and I was dreaming that I would like end up on this beach filled with all these like ancient Greek statues and coins and things like that. And every time I get there, I'd be like, it was very familiar, like, oh, I've been to this place before, and I was supposed to be looking for something. So I would show up on this beach with all these statues, and I'd start examining everything, looking for something, and I wasn't sure what I was looking for. And I had this dream all throughout college and going into my career, and it was bothering me, like, what does this mean? What am I supposed to be looking for? And I sort of thought maybe I'm supposed to be getting back into doing what I love, which is writing these epic adventures and things like that. And once I started writing, the dream stopped. So I was like, aha, I figured what I was supposed to be looking for. So I really do think that that for people like us who are like naturally like the creative types, I think that there is sort of like a subconscious need to do that. So I really do. That's why I always encourage people, just try and find your inner child, because it probably wants to come out. It's probably dying and is bored.
The oppression of society. Right. I have one more question for you, and then we're going to jump into one of my questions from a patron, which awesome. The final question for you from me at this point is, I'll stop diddling and in a second I'll get to it, which is, why, Jenna Moreci, do you write? And I think maybe it goes back into a little what we were just saying.
Yeah, it's just it's like my favorite thing to do. It's been my favorite thing since I was a kid. I love creating stories. I love creating. I've always been a picky reader. Like even books that I loved, even as a kid, I would be like, this book is great, but this is how it should have gone. Like I'm a control freak, and I want my leading characters to look the way I want them to look. I want the story to go the way I want it to go. I want the world to be the way I want it to be. And it's just so much fun for me to create all these worlds, all these people, exactly how I want, exactly what I want to read. And growing up, I was a huge bookworm, but I very rarely found stories where I was like, this is exactly right. Like this is perfect. Not saying I'm a perfect writer, but just you write what you want to read,
Absolutely.
and so for me, it's just it's so much fun. I mean, most people, it's like fun for them is, I don't know, skateboarding or going out partying. And for me, it's like, oh, I just made this demon character and his name is blah, blah, blah. And he's so cool and he's funny and snarky. Like that for me is fun. And it really is just writing for me is playtime. And now I get to do it for money, which just blows my mind. I'm so grateful.
It's amazing. Okay, so I've got a question now sent over from one of my patrons over at www.patreon.com/greatwritersshare. And I believe it's a name that you might be familiar with, which is Yanni Jade.
Yes. Hello.
Hey, who asked, how long did it take for you to write The Savior's Sister and edit it to the point where you were happy with the end result?
That's a very hard question for me to answer because I kept having to take like 3-4 month long breaks because Cliff, because of Cliff's CRPS, he's had more surgeries than I can count. I couldn't even begin to even try. He has had a lot of procedures. He's tried a lot of different treatments. Some have worked, some haven't. And so there were a lot of times where I just had to stop writing. So my best guess would be 2 years, but it's total shot in the dark. I genuinely have no idea because you take so many breaks, you lose track.
Awesome. Okay, so final round now, which is the quick fire round. So I've got 10 questions. I'm going to throw at you as quickly as possible.
Oh gosh.
Answer them as quickly as possible. Feel free to pass if you do struggle, but it's all just in fun. Are you ready?
Okay. All right.
Okay, RoboCop or Terminator?
Terminator.
Romance or gore?
Romance.
Who is your favorite character that you've written?
Tobias and Layla. I'm sorry.
Who is your author role model?
I don't really have an author role model, but the first one that does come to mind is Gail Carson Levine, which is shocking since she writes books for kids, but still, I love her.
What star sign are you?
I'm an Aquarius.
What's one place you'd never go?
Oh my gosh, I don't want to offend anyone. Pass.
What are you currently reading?
Fuck. I'm actually not reading anything right now. I just finished a book, and so I'm between.
What's your favorite lazy Sunday food?
Pizza.
Favorite sport?
I hate sports.
How many marshmallows can you fit in your mouth?
Are they big or small? I'm assuming big. I don't know, maybe 6. I'm guessing.
Beautiful. That's 10 questions. I've got one bonus question, which is where can my listeners find out everything about yourself and all that you're working on?
Oh, yay. Okay. So my website is jennamoreci.com. That's JENNAMORECI. You can also obviously find me on YouTube at Writing with Jenna Moreci. That's my channel. The link is youtube.com/Jenna Moreci. I'm pretty much, if you type in Jenna Moreci on all social medias, you will find me. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook. And of course, my books are available all over the place. The Savior's Champion is all over the place, and The Savior's Sister is coming out in September, and it's available for pre-order right now, and it is currently all over the place as well. So wherever you like to buy books, you can check it out there.
Beautiful. That's perfect. I'll put all those links in the show notes for everyone so you don't have to scan all over the internet. But one last thing from me, which is, Jenna, thank you so much for your time and for coming on the show. It's been a genuine pleasure.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
Thank you. No worries. And thank you everyone for listening, and I will see you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Great Writers Share podcast. Next week, I'll be joined by horror author Julie Heiner. Don't forget you can get early access to every episode of the Great Writers Share podcast and the chance to ask upcoming guests any of your questions just by becoming a patron of the show. All you need to do is visit www.patreon.com/greatwritersshare and support the show for as little as $1 a month. One more time, that's www.patreon.com/greatwritersshare. Until next time.